In this module, we will be discussing teaching approaches. Our four main points will be direct instruction, questions and responses, group discussion, and teaching effectively. In the 1970s and 80s, after much research, Baruch Rosenshein and Robert Stevens identified a model of teaching called direct instruction. Direct instruction is the systematic instruction for mastery of basic skills, facts, and information. When we say basic skills, we're talking about clearly structured knowledge and essential skills such as science facts, mathematical computations, reading vocabulary, and grammar rules. These skills involve tasks that are relatively unambiguous, meaning they can be taught step by step and evaluated through standardized tests. Based off of their research on effective instruction, Rosenshein further identified 6 functions of teaching that could act as a guide for teaching basic skills. The first of these was to review and check the previous day's work. If mistakes were made or there are any misunderstandings, reteach the information as needed. Second, present new material. Start with a clear concept or purpose and give many examples. Next, you'll want to provide guided practice. You want students to be able to answer questions with about an 80% success rate here. Reteach until this is succeeded. Function 4 is to give feedback and correctives based on student answers. We will touch on feedback more later, but remember to reteach any information as necessary. 5 is to provide independent practice. Let the students work independently or in groups. You want success rate here to be about 95%, so they must be well prepared for the level of difficulty provided. You want the students to be confident in their abilities. Finally, review weekly and monthly to consolidate learning. Include review items in their homework and test them often. Also, be sure to review and reteach any missed information that comes from the tests. These functions are not meant to be followed in any specific order, but all of them are elements of effective instruction. Feedback, review, and reteaching should occur whenever necessary and should match the abilities of the students. Keep age in mind. Younger, less prepared students, the briefer your explanation should be. Teachers using direct instruction often start off with an advanced organizer. This is an introduction that's broad enough to encompass all of the information that they're going to talk about. Organizers serve 3 purposes. First, they direct your attention to what's important. Next, they highlight relationships among ideas that are presented to you. And finally, they remind you of the information that you already know that is relevant to what's being talked about. There are 2 categories of advanced organizers: comparative organizers and expository organizers. Comparative organizers activate existing schemas. In other words, they remind you of what you already know but may not realize is relevant. For example, in a computer class who's always used Microsoft Windows, when they go into a lesson on Mac rather than Microsoft, they might start off by comparing the similarities and differences between the 2. Expository organizers, on the other hand, provide new knowledge that students will need in order to understand the upcoming information. For example, in an English class, you might begin a large unit on women's literature with a very broad statement of the theme and why it has been so central in literature. From there, you could begin discussing the novel Pretty Women. Our next topic is questions. When teachers offer up questions, they tend to follow this certain framework known as IRE. Initiation, the teacher will ask the question, followed by response, when the student responds, finally ending up with evaluation or reaction. This is where the teacher will praise or probe or correct or expand upon the student's response. When it comes to discussing the questions a teacher might ask, many people will base their questions off of Bloom's taxonomy at the cognitive level. Here, they might base their question off of knowledge, comprehension, application, analysis, synthesis, or evaluation. The way we are going to discuss questions today is over convergent or divergent questions, meaning a question that has a single answer or questions that have many options for answers. An example of a convergent question, or a question with only one correct answer, might be when something happened, or the year something happened. An example of a divergent question might be questions dealing with opinions or hypotheses. In this story, who did you like most and why? One thing you must always remember when asking students questions is to take into account the student's level of ability. Higher level students can be asked more difficult questions, but lower level students must be challenged but not completely blown out of the water. When asking a question, you always want to get a response. But the thing about responses is you must give wait time. A 3 to 5 second minimum wait time is your best chance at getting a good response. This allows the time for students to think about the question and think about how they want to respond. In this clip from the movie Ferris Bueller's Day Off, you'll see why it is so important to always give a wait time and also to be interesting to your class.
In 1930, the Republican-controlled House of Representatives, in an effort to alleviate the effects of the the Great Depression, passed the the tariff bill, the Hawley-Smoot Tariff Act, which raised tariffs in an effort to collect more revenue for the federal government. Did it work? Anyone know the effects? It did not work, and the United States sank deeper into the Great Depression. Today, we have a similar debate over this. Anyone know what this is, class? Anyone?
This example showed you that the students were given no time to answer, and they had no interest in the class, so of course they didn't even try. The other thing when it comes to response is response to a student's answer. John Haiti and Helen Temperley reviewed several decades of research on feedback and constructed this model to guide teachers. It proposes 3 feedback questions: where am I going, how am I going, and where to next. These questions talk about goals and clarity, progress or movement towards goals, and moving forward to improve understandings when goals are not yet met or to build upon attained goals. The Haiti and Temperley model also considers the focus of the feedback on 4 levels: task, process, self-regulation, and self-feedback. An example of task feedback would be, you need to include more about the Treaty of Versailles. An example of process feedback would be, this page may make more sense if you use strategies we talked about earlier in class. Self-regulation feedback would sound more like, you already know the key features of the opening of an argument. Check to see whether you have incorporated them in your first paragraph. And self-feedback would sound like, you are a great student. That's an intelligent response. Well done. Before responding to a student's answer, you should gauge how they answered. A lot of the times, teachers will just say, okay, and just give simple acceptance of the answer. But there are better reactions depending on how the student's answer is correct, partially correct, or wrong. If their answer is quick, firm, and completely correct, simply accept the answer and move on, or ask another question. If the answer is correct, but they hesitate, give the student some feedback about why the answer is correct. This allows you to explain the material again for those who might be unsure. If the answer is partially or completely wrong, but the student has made an honest attempt, you should probe for more information. Give clues, simplify the question, review the previous steps, or even reteach the material. If the student's wrong answer is silly or careless, it's best to simply just move on and correct them. This next section over group discussion is in some ways similar to the recitation strategy of IRE questions that we discussed earlier. Although the teacher may pose a question for the students to answer, and she may listen to the students' answers, their reactions, and probe for more information, in a true group dialogue, the teacher does not have a dominant role. The students are the ones who ask the questions, answer each other's questions, and respond to each other's answers. The first advantage we're going to discuss is involvement. The students are directly involved and have the chance to participate with one another. This allows them to learn how to express themselves clearly with justifications, as well as gives them the confidence to speak their mind. Next is evaluation. Group discussions help students evaluate ideas and synthesize personal viewpoints. In small groups, you can hear more opinions and ideas that you might not hear as a classroom. And finally, peer challenging. By thinking together and challenging one another, and suggesting and evaluating possible explanations, students are more likely to reach a genuine understanding of the topic. With advantages come disadvantages. The first we're going to discuss is large groups. Large groups often become unwieldy. In many cases, a few students will dominate the discussion while the others just daydream. This also leads to difficulty participating. Some members of the group may not feel comfortable participating and may become anxious if they're forced to speak. This can sometimes stem from a student being unprepared or ignorant of the topic. And finally, there's digression. Class discussions are quite unpredictable, and in small groups, or even large groups, the students may tend to digress off topic. After reviewing research done over a 40-year time period, Karen Murphy and her colleagues concluded, simply putting students into groups and encouraging them to talk is not enough to enhance comprehension and learning. It is but a step in the process. Our final topic is teaching effectively. Let's start with seat work. Seat work is independent classroom desk work. There's limited research, but the main thing you should know is that seat work is designed to follow up a lesson and give students supervised practice. It should never be the main mode of instruction. Before you assign the work, ask yourself, does this work help students learn anything that matters? The objectives should be clear. All the materials that might be needed should be provided, and the work should be easy enough that students can succeed on their own. Success rates should be high, near 100%. When seat work is too difficult, students often resort to guessing or copying just to finish. In contrast to seat work, homework is work that should be taken home and done independently. There is extensive research that has been done on homework. One of the main things that they learned was to benefit from homework, students must understand the assignment. It may help to do the first few questions as a class, just to clear up any misconceptions. This leads into the availability of help at home. When students don't have as much help at home, they tend to have a more difficult time understanding and finishing their homework. In conclusion, there is no one way to teach. Different goals and student needs require different teaching methods. No two teachers will teach exactly alike, and it will require observation on your part to meet the needs of your class and classroom. That's all for today. I thank you for your time and have a wonderful day.